The other side is set on an alternate Earth in the year 1906. It is a world similar to our own, with a few notable differences, the most significant of which is the existence of Malifaux. While many people like to believe that humanity discovered Malifaux, the truth is much different. It was the denizens of Malifaux who discovered us. Thousands of years ago, a great and terrible entity hurled itself across reality, travelling from its native dimension of Malifaux to our own Earth. This entity slammed into Mount Etna like a meteor, triggering a massive volcanic landslide and a mega tsunami that devastated the eastern Mediterranean coastline. Weakened by its interdimensional journey, the entity fell into slumber, but the damage had already been done. The barriers between Earth and Malifaux had been shattered and weakened. In the millennia that followed, the cracks between these two worlds would occasionally align, creating a temporary passage between realms. In this way, creatures and monsters from Malifaux occasionally slip through to Earth, inspiring myths and legends that would linger into the present day. Nowhere was this more evident than in the culture of the Aztec people. In the 14th century, a portal between Earth and Malifaux opened in the Valley of Mexico, unleashing burned and twisted monsters onto the outskirts of Tenochtitlan. The Aztecs were unprepared for the sudden appearance of such creatures, and the brief glimpse they received of another world, of the blasted and charred plains on the other side of the portal, shook their civilization to its very core. Once the portal had closed, and the monsters had been slain or driven off, the Aztec people struggled to make sense of what they had seen. They believed that the world they had seen through the portal had been a glimpse of the future after the sun had died, and, in an attempt to prevent that future, they turned toward human sacrifice to empower the sun and prevent that dark day from coming. Nearly 300 years later, another portal, this one appearing near New Zealand, would draw the great sea monster known as Horomatangi to Earth. Horomatangi proceeded to terrorize and feed upon the Maori people for the better part of 50 years, until it was tricked into eating poison that put the mighty beast into a great slumber. Not every portal disgorged monstrous beasts onto Earth, however. Midway through the 17th century, a portal was discovered by the people of Abyssinia in eastern Africa. In their curiosity, the Abyssinians explored the seemingly desolate New World and discovered a cache of soulstones. The Abyssinians initially believed these soulstones to be nothing more than normal gemstones. It was only after the portal closed that they discovered the truth. Whenever someone died near a soulstone, the gem would absorb their soul and become charged with magical energy that could then be used to cast spells of incredible power. In the wake of this discovery, Abyssinia became known as a strange and mystical place, whose people could wield terrible magical powers. Over time, however, the owners of these soulstones fought with each other, and gradually the miraculous gems were lost, destroyed, or seized by the government for testing. The dwindling might of Abyssinia proved to be a symptom of a larger problem. All across the world, the power of magic was fading. There were many theories on why this was happening, but nothing that hinted at a way to reverse the trend and restore the power that was ebbing away. The sorcerers, warlocks, soothsayers, and wizards of the world eventually came together in 1780 to form the Council, a group dedicated to the restoration of magic. The Council travelled the world in search of answers. They spoke with the shamans of the indigenous tribes of the New World and debated magical theory with the scholars of Abyssinia, but at every turn they only found more questions. Eventually, the Council began to realize that much of their world's magic could be tied back to a second hidden world, one that occasionally came into conjunction with their own. By the reckoning of these mages, there was a barrier between their world and this second world. After years of research, debate, and preparation, the Council finally succeeded in punching a hole through this barrier and created a permanent portal between the two realms, the Great Breach. The devastation was unlike anything that had ever been seen on Earth. In the blink of an eye, The life force was torn from the flesh of the lesser sorcerers as the ritual spiraled out of control and consumed them. A shockwave roared outward from the portal, knocking over buildings and ripping the smaller ones from their foundations. Those few sorcerers and mystics who had managed to shield themselves from the worst of the blast were infused with the raw magical power of the ritual. Unimaginable power coursed through their veins, allowing them to perform wondrous magical feats that previously would have been impossible for the most learned of archmages. As powerful as they now were, even these mages were humbled by the sight of the portal they had created. They had chosen the city of Santa Fe as the location of their ritual, as it was remote enough to not attract much attention from the governments of the world, and now that city, or its ruins at the very least, was forever linked to a sister city in another dimension. The sign hanging above the city on the other side of the portal proclaimed its name to be Malifaux, and the sorcerers applied that name to the newly discovered dimension as well. The announcement of Malifaux's existence shocked the world. The council called for the people of the world to travel to Santa Fe, now renamed Breachtown, and cross through the portal to join them in Malifaux City. In short order, the abandoned city became a thriving metropolis, a melting pot of the world's most curious and ambitious explorers and scholars. Beyond the city's walls, boomtowns sprang up around the ruins of ancient mining sites. The council had rediscovered the soulstones of Abyssinian legend, and they paid good wages to anyone willing to excavate the magical gemstones from the ground. Everywhere, people experimented with soulstones. Alchemists ground the gems into powder that served as components for magical mixtures and medicines, while inventors and engineers used them as power sources for increasingly complex machines. Across the world, people with no previous magical talent used soulstones to become powerful and influential mages. The animation of the first construct, a machine that was capable of walking and acting with some degree of autonomy, revolutionized the mechanical sciences. The creation and animation of these machines soon became vogue in the city, and functioning machines were sent back through the breach in droves as curiosities for kings and courtiers, objects of careful study for scholars and engineers, and unflinching weapons of warfare for generals and warlords. Amidst all of these wondrous advances, however, a darker threat emerged. The discovery of an ancient grimoire in the necropolis beneath the city gave rise to the first necromancer, a terrible villain who raised an army of the dead and attempted to wrestle control of the city away from the council. Though the nameless necromancer was defeated, it marked a turning point in history. No longer was humanity blind to the terrible danger posed by Malifaux's many hidden secrets. In the winter of 1797, the worst came to pass. Amidst growing aggression from the native population of Malifaux, a loose collection of nightmarish monsters that humanity had taken to calling the Neverborn, a terrible winter storm engulfed the city, trapping its residents indoors around whatever fires they could make. Beyond that, details become scarce. What is known is that the great stone archway that had been built around the breach began to tremble and crack. The breach began to slowly shiver and shrink, and those who pushed against it were rebuffed by a cold blast of wind. Countless soulstones were expended in an attempt to stabilize the breach, but to no avail. Before the breach closed, a body came hurling through the breach. On its torso was carved a single word: Oz.